Welcome to episode 9 of the Hard Truth About B2B eCommerce. I'm your co-host, Isaiah Bollinger from Trellis, and I'm here with Tim. Tim, take it away.
Hey, I'm Timothy Peterson. I'm a B2B and B2C e-commerce guy for many years and a client advocate for Trellis. And let me give you some information on our sponsor, Punch Out To Go. Punch Out To Go is a global B2B integration company specializing in connecting commerce business platforms with e-procurement and ERP applications. And Punch Out To Go's iPaaS technology seamlessly links business applications to automate the flow of purchasing data. With their solution, you can immediately reduce integration complexities for punch-out catalogs, electronic purchase orders, e-invoices, and other B2B sales order automation documents in order to accelerate your business results. So thank you to our sponsor. And now back to you, Isaiah.
Yeah, thank you. So David, very excited to introduce our guest, David Crouch from Slatwall. Slatwall Commerce is a platform developed by 1024 Web, which is your original company. Now it's really Slatwall Commerce, which is the product that you guys have developed. And we've had a little bit of a relationship over the years because I think you guys are one of the only e-commerce platforms headquartered in Massachusetts right now that I'm aware of. They've all gotten shipped out,
Exactly.
Adobe bought Magento and they're in San Francisco, Shopify's in Canada.
Right.
There might be some other smaller ones, but you guys, that's kind of how we got connected because we're both here in Massachusetts. So, and Brad, great to bring you on as well. But I'll leave it to you guys to kind of continue the introduction.
Yeah, thanks, Isaiah. Yeah, so I'm Dave Crouch. I'm the CEO of Slatwall. Brad Gustavesen is our CMO. He's one of 3 partners in the company. We worked together going back to 2002, the 3 of us.
Wow.
We started the company in 2008, and we had built a bunch of custom e-commerce projects over the years. And decided that we really wanted to create a framework that would get us 85-90% of what we needed in every project right out of the box, but was really highly configurable. And that's where Slatwall started. That was the kind of starting point for Slatwall, and we've been building it ever since. We're a bootstrapped company, so we haven't taken any outside money. Kind of slow growth, working closely with clients, and building the platform based on those requirements that the clients have given us over the years. We're a team of about 40 people now, headquartered in Worcester, Mass, and then we've got a small team in India as well.
Awesome. That's awesome. And just kind of curious, as this platform evolved, when we were talking before we started the podcast, and I don't think you guys maybe necessarily anticipated this in 2008 when you started, but it sounds like it's become more and more of a B2B e-commerce focused platform. And when did that really start to kind of ring bells? You're like, maybe we should focus more on B2B, or I'm sure there was a point.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I'd like to say it was careful planning, but it was, like I said, we've, because we've bootstrapped the business, it's not like we had a huge war chest of money and decided, okay, here's the direction we want to take the platform. It was really based on the projects we got. So very early on, we were working with B2B companies and starting to build kind of B2B specific features and functions into the platform. So right from really day one. And, our client base has really been a bit of a combination of B2C and B2B over the years, but those B2B features we've continued to kind of build on. Another piece to the platform that really kind of came in early on was, Slatwall can sell physical goods really well. Any e-commerce platform typically can, right? It's a shippable good that somebody puts in a cart and gets put in a box and shipped out. But we also do really well with subscriptions, and that's certainly been more and more top of mind on the B2C side, but is also kind of coming more into play on the B2B side as well. When you start to think about kind of reorders and kind of scheduled shipments and those kinds of things. So so B2B has really been part of the platform since day one. And again, not because it was, some grand plan. It was just, those are the projects that came in the door, and, we built the platform based on those projects. So.
And now that you guys have grown a little bit, matured a little bit, you guys have started to focus more of your
Yeah,
your
absolutely.
marketing and
Mhm.
sales in that
Yeah.
direction. I'm sure you've learned a lot too from
Yeah.
the.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think there's a huge opportunity on the B2B side. We know the business very well. I've been involved in B2B companies, distributors, in the past. My family has as well. My brother owns a distributor down in Florida. So we know that business really well. We know a lot of the, kind of complexities and issues that they come up against. So, and there's, it's just on the e-commerce side, B2B is just growing so quickly, and there's so many opportunities there. We felt it was a good place to focus.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I just want to touch on one thing that you said that was really interesting, and it's kind of come up in different ways throughout. Since this is episode 9, and
Mhm.
we're talking to some people on the merchant side that actually like work for distributors or manufacturers, and some people kind of like on more the product or agency side, like you and us at Trellis. And I think this idea of subscriptions for B2B is really interesting. I think what I kind of see as the future of B2B is people want the kind of the bulk purchasing ability to get a discount
Yeah.
of, let's say I want 1,000 units or 10,000 units, but I don't necessarily want them delivered all today because I don't want to have to sit on 10,000 units, and I don't necessarily want to have to pay for all 10,000 units today, but I want you to give me the discount of the 10,000
Right.
units. Maybe you give me this scheduled, subscription, kind of like B2B subscription that maybe you guys tweak for specific use cases, and they get like 100 a week or 1,000 a week or whatever it is, and some sort of I could see there being lots of different nuances to that. And it sounds like you guys are kind of already thinking about this and seeing this in
Yeah.
action and have actually built something into the core of your product.
Yeah, we have, and I'll let Brad jump in because he can talk more about it. But
Yeah.
it's it's really been again, subscription, and kind of the subscription model is something that we started really early on in the building the Slatwall platform. But this idea of kind of scheduled shipments is really something that we've spent a lot of time on in the last like 24 months. And like you said, there's a ton of complexity to that. Brad, I don't know if you want to add some color to that.
Yeah, and I think the one really interesting thing that we've been hearing from a lot of people in different conversations is they sort of look at their big sale that they make, and maybe they make that online and it's offline and it's really complicated, and that gets done, and then they say, okay, well, what now, right? And then a lot of times there are those supplies that run out, or things that are going to break in 6 months. And the machine itself maybe is going to last whatever 5, 6, 10, 20 years. And so they know that chances are this new customer I just signed up is going to need this stuff. And all they need to do is just a way to sort of apply that intelligence to what they're selling. And the subscription really lets them do that.
Yeah.
Say, hey, Isaiah, I know this machine you just bought for a couple $1 million is going to need these supplies in 3 months and 6 months. Just have them show up. And so it really lets the sales guy, not focus necessarily on that business, but lets them focus more on finding more of the big sales.
Yeah.
And let the supplies kind of handle themselves.
Hey, let me interject for a second, Brad, because one of the things that I've seen, and this is sort of one of those crossover things that we're all watching in real time, but I've seen a subscription, let's say, like Orders, where there is a view, let's say, on a dashboard for the consumer, and it's basically showing percent of order that's been fulfilled, right? Mm-hmm. And you move it back and forth, and you say, well, at this point, it should be 25% of your order fulfilled, but do you want to move it up to 33? So that in the next shipment, you're moving it this far. And then as you get closer to the end of that 100% of the order, all of these automated reorder, technologies come into play. You're getting communicated to differently. And it really saves so many steps. People love that kind of flexibility. It's just very personal, right? It's that personalization, I think, is coming in.
Yeah, absolutely. And really, when you sort of think about a subscription, really all you're doing is you're scheduling deliveries.
Yeah.
Very
Um,
true.
and so really in the back end under the subscription banner in Slatwall, that's really what it's called. And so if you think about, just like if you go out and you subscribe to a magazine that's going to arrive in your mailbox, well, maybe not now, but back in the day, right? And it would come in every, every first of the month. Well, it's the same thing. You're planning that out over a year, over 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And so, or maybe just ongoing, but that's going to happen. So when you need to move that up or change the delivery date or, change how much is being delivered, it's a much simpler process than going in and saying, well, let me go find that machine model that I purchased. Let me find exactly the part that I need or the supply that I need, and then start the whole process over again, which is done, to your point, in a much cleaner interface, than what, we would have had or what someone usually has, as far as reordering goes.
Yeah, and if you think about what people, and I love your point of how it's really like scheduling delivery in the future, and I think there's like a win-win on both sides, because as the customer, you don't have to worry about logging back in all the time and placing an order. Oh, I forgot to reorder this thing, and then I'm out of it. And I have subscriptions personally, obviously, for things like that, so I don't have to worry about getting a new product for whatever it is. Like razors is obviously a popular one.
Yeah.
But I think I could see with B2B, they want more, to Tim's point, more personalization. I think you're already seeing that in some of the B2C, but even more personalization in B2B of like, sure, I'll sign up for the subscription, but I do want some control of maybe there's a month where I don't need it or whatever it may be.
Yeah, and that's exactly when I say we spent the last 24 months. It's all around that, right? So yeah, I may want this product this month, but then even to configure what's part of that shipment, right? And then what's the frequency of that shipment?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So the template is there, but giving the customer the ability to shift that either the order, the frequency, or what's part of the order within some parameter. Right, it's got to be a minimum order level, perhaps, or they can only shift that shipment out another 30 or 60 days, right? Again, based on maybe the pricing parameters that were part of the original kind of purchase. So those are some of the complexities that we've kind of built into Slatwall over the last 24 months.
That's awesome,
and give a lot of flexibility to the end customer.
Cool. Well, yeah, we're already getting deep into the weeds, which I like.
Yeah.
We want to give people some real insight into specific things they could be doing better. But yeah, we could definitely keep going into the technologies, but I think let's change gears a little bit. Tim, do you want to talk about some of your favorite topics?
I have many favorite topics, but I'll tell you one of the things that I like to bring up. The folks we are fortunate enough to speak with, and our listeners seem to really like this, is really about success and failure. Because people are making investments, right? And there are different stages in their business cycles. Let's say they're early stage, or they're kind of been around a while and they're trying to decide about upgrades or changes, or they're mature in some way and it becomes this big, let's say, multi-year project even. So let's talk a little bit about what you see as what a successful B2B venture should be doing today. Maybe that's a way to turn it on its head, instead of saying how do people fail, but what should a successful B2B player be looking to do right now or in the next few months?
Yeah, and certainly circumstances in the last few months have probably changed that a little bit. I think a lot of where people can see success is trying to get away from those big multi-year projects, and trying to tackle.
Hard to say a 3-year project is successful, right?
I know. I agree. It's
not many of them, right? So it's really trying to prioritize what's going to give your customers the biggest return, and the business the biggest return, and do that in a much smaller incremental way. And I think that is where people see the most success. We talk about agile all the time, right? As a company, but trying to approach these kinds of projects in that way. Doesn't mean you can't think about the big picture and kind of lay that roadmap out, right, at a high level,
Yeah.
but really kind of try to tackle that in stages, and kind of evaluate along the way, because you try to build this massive project, which is 12 months, 24 months, however long it is. By the time you get a third of the way through that, things have changed already anyway, and what you thought you needed,
Absolutely.
it doesn't even make sense anymore.
Some
right?
of your ideas might have just,
Right.
you might not have been good.
Right. Or, the market changes completely like it has in the last 4 months, right?
Yeah.
So, I think, and particularly on the B2B side, a lot of those challenges around their traditional channels are gone, right? I mean, the sales guy knocking on the door, the trade show, right? Those things just aren't there anymore, or they're difficult, or more
Yeah.
difficult. So, and they've always kind of seen, e-commerce spending as maybe a nice to have, where now it's, probably seen more as a necessity, right? We need to do this,
Absolutely.
but we
Especially
don't
if you want to
have,
grow.
yeah, we don't have, $1 million, in a year or 2 years to get that done. So how do we do that in a much quicker, more cost-effective way, so we can see some return, more quickly, and as opposed to
Yeah.
these.
I love that answer. And I want to dig into that a little bit more, because we love the clients that kind of get on board with more of an agile MVP approach, and sometimes it goes really well. But I'm just curious, and I'm sure you guys have dealt with these challenges. Do you guys find it can be challenging from a project management standpoint? I think there's a few challenges. One is getting people to align on some sort of budget, like especially a lot of these distributors and manufacturers in B2B, they're used to, okay, what's it going to cost? It's $100,000. You're going to get me up and running, and that's all. It's going to be that. But when you go agile, sometimes it's hard to be. It's not always going to be this set $50,000 or set $100,000 scope. So how do you guys manage that from a project management standpoint? And
Yeah, that's an ever moving target. I mean, what we, there's a couple of different ways to do it. We have an engineering process, so it depends on the scope of the project, right? Some of the things that we're doing now, there's 3 big lifts, right, in a project. One typically is I want to, custom design front end, right? That's one big lift, right? If you're going to do that. So a lot of what we're doing now is say, let's eliminate that for now. There's some great templates out there. You're going to look professional. It's going to work. The tech is solid. And then we can kind of look at that down the road if you need to, really
make it better. Yeah,
actually, absolutely. The other big lift is data. And that's that's never ever easy. Everybody's data is in, it could be in multiple different places. If you're a distributor, you're getting it from different manufacturers in different formats. What's the state perhaps of an ERP system and the data in there? So data, it's really tough to kind of quantify the level of effort on that side. That tends to be the biggest unknown. And then the third lift is generally integrations, right? And whether it's with an ERP system or a CRM, or now that's becoming certainly more and more kind of commoditized, if you will, right? I mean, APIs have certainly made
or these middleware platforms, or like we have a good partnership with Soligo. There's like Dell Boomi's obviously a big one.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm sure you guys have seen all this stuff out there.
Yeah. So so that has become,
not to mention our sponsor, Punch Out To Go. So sorry, we gotta mention them.
throw Brady some love. Yes, so those have become a bit of an easier lift. So the big one is the data. So that's when we go into a project, that's where we usually spend most of the time is understanding the state of the data.
Yeah.
And so then the question becomes, do we do that in a sales kind of process? Right.
That's tough because if you don't charge for it, I mean, that could, who knows how long that could take you.
Exactly, right. Yeah. That's where the balancing act becomes. Or,
Yeah.
you do it in a formal engineering, where you're actually going to, do a deep dive into the data and build, workflows and
Yep.
all of those things. That's what we like to do. So the client knows exactly what they're going to get out of the end of that. They're going to have some really actionable kind of insights into their product data and how that, it's not even just product data. It could be accounts, right? It's orders, but usually it's products is the biggest mess.
Yep.
But how are they going to, kind of get that into a state where it's going to work, in an e-commerce setting? Because very often that's different than what might be on a ERP, in
Yep.
an ERP
For
setting,
sure.
moving resources around versus, actually merchandising and pricing and promoting them online. So we'll spend as much time as we need there, and figure out what that effort is and build that cost into, and come as close as we can as to fixed as we possibly can. We've done it. We've done this so many times that we're able to come as close and be as comfortable with that kind of fixed cost on some of those things as possible. But
you're still moving in somewhat of an agile fashion, as you go through. But I really like the idea of breaking out the big chunks, and I totally agree. Like having some MVP approaches or showing them the incremental change of maybe I think actually it was like our third episode. We're talking to Aaron, who's got a lot of project management, e-commerce experience. And we're talking about, if you don't have this massive budget, which most of these guys don't, maybe focus on, your product data is probably number one. Because if the product data is not in there, I mean, you can't really sell much, right? People can't really browse and order. And then maybe after that you focus on, the integration or something like that, or potentially the theme, you start with the basic theme.
Yeah. We had a interesting conversation with they're a manufacturer, and they're probably, $70 or $80 million company, and they have a bunch of stuff written in Lotus Notes, if you can believe it.
I believe it.
Yeah. I don't even know what that would look like or what that would be, but can you even access that somehow?
It wasn't pretty, but and they sell kind of equipment's very expensive, the stuff that they sell, and they've got a spare parts consumables business, but they training, they used to deliver in person, but they've got this new online kind of training that they've built. And there was real value to that. And getting, for them, this MVP was, how do we get our, make it way easier for our customers to be able to just purchase that online training, that e-learning, and this is across the world. If they're in Europe, Asia, South America, North America, how do we take those modules that we've built and make those easier to buy, purchase, access, right?
Yep.
And that was their kind of MVP. And the kind of consumable stuff, it's okay. They're fine with that for now. But the return on these e-learning modules, right? Because the margins are, they built it already, so it's just access.
Yeah. Great.
So that's really what their MVP was. So that was, and replacing Lotus Notes is kind of a bonus. So that was an easy one to kind of focus on and narrow down to that kind of MVP. Those are the kinds of things that we want to try to focus on with these customers.
Yep. And then once, I think it's so important to get something live.
Right.
That's what people do, is they spend too much time trying to get live, and then you can make the incremental changes and see more progress.
Right.
And
exactly. Yeah. And I think that you talk about success or failure, and a lot of times, they focus on the project and not what needs to happen after that project, right? Because this is an incremental, in order for this to be successful, it's going to need, ongoing kind of resources and marketing. And sometimes that buy-in isn't there. And, they were like, well, the project's done. It should
It's
just
never done.
Right.
Your e-commerce site is never done.
That's something I actually wanted to bring up to Brad. Brad, I'm the CMO of a tech startup in addition to a lot of the other things that I work on. So you're a CMO, you understand what these responsibilities are and how things work. So how do you have conversations with, potential clients and then clients really about, exactly, what we're talking about here, about the ongoing piece of it, how things aren't just a discrete project for 30 days or till the end of X. Like, how do you talk about that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think, part of it is those conversations come up a little bit when you sort of talk about, well, here's what we're going to do for launch. And then during that process, you start having the conversation of, okay, here are the things that we think we might want to do in phase one. And it doesn't have to be, a set list of deliverables. It doesn't have to be a function. It doesn't have to go into any detail, but just at high level, what do we think those things are? Or what do you think those things are for version 1.1? What are the things you might want to test? What are the things that would be nice to have? All that. And when you start talking about that, that sort of leads into the conversation of, well, when we're building this thing now, we might want to test against this, or we think we might want to integrate this into our CRM, or you sort of start that conversation, and inevitably, if you can have that, it seems like that's a really good lead in to sort of putting some light on, oh, well, we're going to need somebody who sort of understands email marketing, or we're going to launch all these other product categories online for sale. We're going to need some way to get that data. We might need to loop in an IT guy, or those sorts of things. And there's with any e-commerce project, and certainly you guys have seen it too. It doesn't just involve a really select team. It inevitably sort of leaks out, and
For sure.
You have to loop in other people that may or may not typically think of themselves sort of as involved in that business. Or that business channel. So, it just sort of the earlier on you can start talking about, what are you guys going to need when we flip the switch? What are you going to need? And there's some shifts to it certainly, but you may not need integration support, but you're going to need marketing, product, photography, maybe all those things to sort of expand out and really deliver on the next version. And yeah, I mean, that the earlier you can start talking about the future, as crazy as it sounds while you're maybe in the development process, usually the better that works out.
Yeah, great answer. Because that's exactly how I think of it. It's like, I got to talk about the future, before you even start anything in a sense.
Yeah,
really
and I think that part of it is during the process, what do you call it? Engineering, planning, whatever word you use for it. There are going to be things that come up that, someone's going to react and say, oh man, we really should have thought of that. That needs to be in the MVP. Oh, okay. So you lump that in, but then you have to say to yourself, well, do I want to push the launch date out? Do I need to add in a new resource? Or can I take something that was in my MVP now and maybe I can move it out? And you sort of start to have that conversation that, of course, is going to happen during the process, but there's a lot of value to sometimes almost kind of forgetting about things. And because it sort of reassesses your priority to say, well, back in February, we thought this thing was really, really important, right? You can imagine sort of pre-COVID priorities, right? And then what they might look like now, and they could be completely different just based on, the business, at that point in time, maybe a new product line, a new executive, things change. And especially when you're, launching over the course of a few months, the business could look different, and those things tend to move around.
I think you said something really important that I'm a big believer in especially with B2B e-commerce, but I think it should apply to really B2C and all e-commerce, is that like it can't no longer be treated as like, oh, like this one little department or this person. If you really want to be successful, like you said, it spills into all the departments. And that's why I think you need some executive leadership and skill there, because the problem like that I see is, you put it in the hands of this one guy who's not an executive, but he has a hard time getting other departments to maybe change processes that would make e-commerce better or do things that make e-commerce. So I really think you need some executive leadership there that's willing to go, hey, procurement or whatever it is, you're the ones buying products or getting new stuff in stock. You need to do it this way so that it's easier for them to upload new products to the website. You know what I mean? Like, kind of get everyone on board. And I think that whole like internal, culture needs to change a little bit.
Yeah,
and that
absolutely.
really speaks to the idea of that MVP, that sort of quick win, where if there is maybe just that one executive or that one guy who is sort of, tasked with delivering, if that one guy is trying to deliver the world, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
But if you can really be specific about what that is, if it's, maybe the marketing, team's sort of driving it. Well, what's that thing that's really going to provide some value, increase sales, be more efficient, reduce costs, any one of those things. If you sort of narrow that in, then it can work and get something live, and then prove to the rest of the company, hey, here's what we've done. Let's do more, right? And again, if that initial project is massive, it's huge, it's not going to happen. And then it just, of course, it just provides more ammo to the rest of the team that wasn't necessarily buying in. Like, hey, we tried this thing, it just didn't work.
Yeah, no, that makes so much sense. So,
and I think Isaiah, just to add one last thing on that,
sure.
you mentioned kind of needing buy-in from all of these entities within the business. I think that's going to be a big challenge on the B2B side, again, because this is not, for most companies, a traditional channel, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it can be seen, as competing with other channels in a lot of ways, right? There's, you talk to manufacturers, and they might be selling through direct sales teams or just through distributors, and
Yeah.
E-commerce has always been seen, or in most cases, as competing with those channels, right? And that's just not on the kind of outward sales side, but then also that's within the company as well. So that's a mindset that is going to have to change. And how does this new channel work within the kind of constructs of the traditional business models you've had in place, right? Accounting, operations, sales, right? All of those things. And if there isn't buy-in there, whoever's leading this charge is not going to do well.
Yeah, and I think what you said is so important. And I think a lot of these companies are operating in this fear defense mindset. I don't know.
A lot of these companies are.
I'm sure you've heard Gary Vee. He's a very big on social media, and he talks about offense and defense. And I think it is very true that too many companies are stuck in defense, especially these B2B companies, and their defense is protect our existing channels, protect our sales reps, because they're scared that if we do e-commerce, the sales reps will become obsolete. And it's like, if you just keep playing defense forever, eventually you just become obsolete, because maybe your retailers died out because they're not doing e-commerce or something. You know what I mean? Like you gotta get out of that mindset to some degree. I can understand having a little bit of that.
Yeah. There, it's going to take some time. But I think if they're not thinking in that direction, they're going to find themselves in trouble eventually.
Yeah, you got to score some points, right? That's why you need some offense, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
So, cool. We covered a lot of the stuff we wanted to talk about. So,
yeah, I mean, I just had one other quick question. I mean, you can answer this any way you like, right? But I usually ask folks what they think of B2B versus B2C, in like what B2B is still learning from B2C. Like, it's because in at least my experience, a lot of B2C was ahead in a lot of tech, at least in adoption, right? Yeah. So what is B2B still learning, or what do you think they should be learning from B2C today?
Yeah, I mean, I'll answer quickly, and I'm sure Brad, because Brad was on the B2C side for a number of years, so he could probably jump in as well. But I think probably it's really around promotion, and marketing. It's, again,
Right, right.
B2B, has really been again, more traditional, right? The salesperson walks in, they follow up with some brochures, and they gets into a CRM system and they kind of keep calling, right? But leveraging kind of customer data and segmenting that and being able to, use that in an online, from an online and offline, for that matter, but kind of being more kind of promotional and more kind of marketing focused, particularly when it comes to the e-commerce piece, is something that I think B2B is can learn from B2C, and certainly B2C is way ahead on that end. And that becomes more, again, it's about investment, it's about resources, it's about kind of leadership, saying this is important, right? If we want to be successful, we have to do these things. And I think that's, there's certainly some big B2B players out there that are doing that, and it's just going to take some time for that to kind of trickle down.
Yeah.
Brad, if you want.
I love that you brought that up, because I don't think anyone's brought that up when you've asked that, Tim. Like,
Yeah,
we've talked about a lot of
you're right.
things, but we haven't really dug into promotions. And Brad, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. But like that B2C marketing with we do a lot of B2C at Trellis and Shopify, and it's I call it the B2C playbook. Like, it works. It's out there. You do some email sign up promos, like abandoned cart promos or whatever, like these kind of like promo things. And then you get your Facebook ads, and like, it really works. And if you have a good product market fit, you can scale it. But like with B2B, I feel like it's a lot harder. You can't just, slap on a couple discount codes and call it. Like, that's why, part of why we started this podcast, because I think it's just so much more complex. Are there anything in B2B marketing that you guys see, there's no one size fits all, but you see is working in terms of some little tricks or?
Yeah, well, I think the one thing that I think kind of gets forgotten is there's sort of a ton of data that your e-commerce platform generates.
Yep.
And figuring out how you can access that and sort of lean into that, and sort of gain some analysis. And in a lot of cases, if they're these really high dollar orders, that you don't necessarily need huge volumes to sort of, it's not like you need to go out and sell 1,000 mattresses or some huge number of orders. You might be happy with 2, 3, 4. And so a lot of it is sort of getting the data out of your system, of your platform, and using that in sort of a smart way. We talk a lot about, it doesn't necessarily need to be a new sale to have value. And we were just talking with someone, I think last week, who was like, so many distributors and wholesalers that he's talking to are so focused on a new sale, and that's not necessarily all the value that your e-commerce sort of operation is going to bring to you. If you just go in there and say, well, how can I get data out of the platform that's going to enable more repeat business? And could that be, we leverage some different sort of promotion, like what Dave just mentioned, or even just, follow up with quote, send out a quote, to someone that we've spoken with, maybe that they generated, a month ago, and no one's followed up with them on it. Maybe it's just, hey, Isaiah, you asked for a quote a month ago. We haven't heard from you. Do you have any questions? Something really simple. And it doesn't need to be overly complicated, but you sort of step back and say, well, we already have this sales staff. How can we use data, and how can we use some of the functionality in the platform that we've got to help them out? Just almost like just to be backup, really, and let them talk to their existing customers they've got in a better way, in a smarter way, or reach out to new people in a better way, in a smarter way, and sort of drive the business that way. It doesn't need to be, revolutionary. I think like the one conversation that we sort of overhear a bunch is, someone talking about putting, like a social media buttons on their product pages for B2B. And it's like, yeah, you can do that. It's not necessarily going to drive your business. Let's talk about doing more smarter, more automated things.
So true. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that answer. So, and if you're doing it right, you should have, you might have a pretty big catalog, 10, 20, 30, 100,000 products potentially, even more, but, a decent sized catalog. And then you might have a decent sized customer base. So you could look at the data, like who's ordering, how often are they ordering? You have all this data in there, and then you can say, okay, they order once a month. Maybe we should offer them, some special offer to they'll buy twice a month or whatever it is, and just make more data-driven marketing decisions instead of sales reps just kind of focusing on the relationship and thinking they know what they want, but not necessarily actually seeing all the data.
Yeah, and I think in some cases, you talk about a huge product catalog, 100,000 products. Chances are, 10, 20% of those products are actually really being sold.
Yep.
And so it kind of leads you to think, well, what are we not pushing right now that we should be pushing more? Or are there some hidden gems in there right now that really aren't selling because they just lost in the shuffle on the website? Maybe they're not merchandised well. Maybe they're missing product data. Heck, maybe some of them aren't even published.
Yep.
So
cross sells, upsells,
Exactly. And I think, when you sort of think about that, and think about, well, again, how can you take that and apply some logic to it without going crazy with, super expensive personalization systems and all kinds of other stuff, just really baby steps. How can I be smarter about what I'm selling and who I'm selling to and how I'm contacting people? If you really step back and take that approach, you can get a lot more out of the e-commerce investment that you're making, and drive repeat business and find a whole slew of new customers.
Yeah, great answer. So we've been on for a little while now. So I want to just at least get to one of my topics that I like to talk about, which is what do you guys, because you guys have done a great job innovating, and I think the subscription thing is really cool that you guys developed from a B2B perspective. Obviously, I think it's been in B2C for a while, but I still think it's very untouched in B2B in a lot of ways compared to what it could be. What do you guys see kind of like the next, wave of innovation in B2B? And maybe it is more advanced subscription, but I notice you guys do Headless, or you're supporting that through APIs. So I'm sure you guys have seen that trend. Like, what do you, it's hard to predict 10 years out, but your best kind of future prediction of what you see kind of happening.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think, tools, it's not so much on the tool side, it's more about data and data management, and B2B companies just getting smarter about that and better about that, and understanding, kind of to talk to what Brad was just saying, that the power of that data.
Yeah.
And that's really where I think they're going to need to spend, or the companies that do spend time in that, understanding their data and how they can leverage it is real 5 to 10 years.
So you think that, we're going to see kind of a more sophisticated data capability from B2B? Do you think it's going to be technology driving that, or more processes within the companies driving that?
I think it's going to be a combination of the two. I think that, that's one of the biggest challenges we see on the technology side, is that there's these, kind of traditional ERP product around, right? Warehousing and getting it out the door, but weren't really built to, sell online and merchandise and do all those other things. So I think that's one of the challenges from a technology side, is kind of bridging that gap between kind of ERP and e-commerce. And it's where frankly, where we find a lot of our projects. But it's also process, right? And again, understanding the investment and the time and the resources to getting this data right, and then figuring out how to leverage it. And again, like Brad said, kind of taking those baby steps. You don't have to jump right into kind of personalization and, spending a ton of money on that, but there's ways to do this in kind of incremental steps, which could be really powerful, kind of across the company. Better reporting, better sales, right? Better customer service, all comes from kind of understanding and getting access to that data.
Yeah, no, I love that answer. And I think we're seeing a little bit of that now, but companies are starting to realize like my ERP really isn't suited for the data I need for e-commerce. But I still need that data in e-commerce to some degree. And then how do I get the rest into my e-com platform? And between process and technology, they need to kind of figure that out better than they are today. And it's going to take a while because it's so much data. It's hard to solve that quickly when you have
absolutely
50,000 products or 100,000 products.
Yeah, it's not an easy lift.
Yeah, well, it's great that you just mentioned that, because I want to kind of wrap up here, and our episode 10, which is coming up, recording next week, is actually with a small kind of like services agency where he focuses on product data and process and helping companies kind of solve this problem. So hopefully for our listeners that come back, we'll talk about what he does to help them solve that from kind of an operational standpoint. And I think I'm going to connect you guys, because he might be a good partner for you guys for some of that work that you might need to offload from time to time, since you guys are you obviously want to focus on products.
Yep.
Sounds great.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Sounds good.
All right. Well, thanks everyone. Thanks for joining. It was great to have you guys and catch up.
It was a pleasure having you guys here today.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah. It was a great conversation. Thanks, Isaiah. Thanks, Timothy.
Yeah. Thank you.